Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to welcome you today to the launch of the 2025 Country Focus Reports, CFRs, of the African Development Bank Group. I bring you warm greetings from Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the President of the African Development Bank Group. These reports follow the African Economic Outlook Report, AEO 2025, which we launched in May 2025 during the African Development Bank Group's annual meetings in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, under the theme, Making Africa's Capital Work Better for Africa's Development. Like the AEO reports, the country focus reports offer in-depth country-specific analysis, as well as clear, actionable policy recommendations tailored to local realities and aimed at unlocking countries' full capital potential to drive inclusive growth, foster prosperity, and ensure sustainable development in Africa. Across Africa, we have seen some positive signs. The average real GDP growth increased from 3.0% in 2023 to 3.3% in 2024, driven by robust government spending and strong private consumption on the demand side, and the expansion in the services sector in the supply side. The growth uptick in 2024 was evident in 29 out of 54 African countries. In addition, 10 African countries, including Angola, Ghana, Niger, and Uganda, saw growth increases of more than 1 percentage points from 2023 to 2024. However, the slight improvement was overshadowed by persistent inflationary pressures in many African countries, currency depreciations, and high debt service costs. Moreover, ongoing external shocks and rising global uncertainty call for vigilance and targeted measures to sustain and accelerate the growth progress we are seeing. Looking ahead, Africa's growth is projected to reach 3.9% in 2025 and firm up to 4% in 2026. These figures represent 0.2 and 0.4 percentage points downgrades from earlier estimates due to rising trade tensions and associated global uncertainties. Despite this, Africa continues to be the second fastest growing region in the world after Asia. 21 African countries are expected to grow more than 5% in 2025 and 2026 respectively, with 4 of them, namely Ethiopia, Niger, Rwanda, and Senegal, potentially reaching the 7 percentage point thresholds needed to address poverty and promote inclusive growth and sustainable development in Africa. Importantly, Africa's projected growth rates in 2025 and 2026 will surpass the global average and that of other regions except emerging and developing Asia, and 13 out of the 20 fastest growing economies in the world by 2025 will be in Africa. Nevertheless, challenges persist. Although macroeconomic resilience has improved, GDP per capita growth remains modest, estimated at 0.9% in 2024, up from 0.7% in 2023, which is 0.5 percentage points lower than that of Latin America and the Caribbean, and 2.9 percentage points below that of Asia, which is the best performing region as of today. Poverty and youth unemployment therefore remain widespread, explained by disparities in access to basic social services and a mismatch between potential skills and labor market needs. However, human capital development in Africa therefore remains a major constraint, with 2020 Human Capital Index revealing some progress but also persistent gaps relative to global peers. Africa recorded an average human capital development index of 0.1 unchanged since 2010, meaning that children born a decade apart would be at the same level and only 40% as productive as those born in an environment with full health care and universal education. Future risks, such as aid reductions and rising global instability, could exacerbate vulnerabilities in Africa's human capital and health sectors. According to the AEO 2024 report, Africa's weak tax administration capacity and widespread inefficiencies in tax collection, retention, and utilization largely explains the underperformance in government revenue collection from both tax and non-tax sources. Although over 80% of Africa's public expenditure comes from domestic revenue, there remain huge headrooms in both tax and non-tax revenue collection for Africa to mobilize further fiscal capital to support development in Africa. In total, the report estimates that Africa could mobilize and retain about $1.43 trillion in domestic resources from boosting tax and non-tax revenues, formalizing the informal sector, curbing illicit financial flows and corruption, tackling profit shifting, and also implementing measures to reduce Africa's risk premium, to name a few of the measures highlighted by the report. This is more than enough to close the estimated financing needs of $1.3 billion US dollars to achieve the SDGs in Africa by 2030. In addition, Africa possesses significant and diversified potentials in all forms of capital. In human capital, Africa holds over 80%, over 30% of global resources, with a number of green resources prevalent across many countries in Africa. The mineral resources, together with the significant deposits of rare earth minerals that Africa possesses, are in high demand in advanced technology industries and are bound to play key roles in the just energy transitions of the future. Yet, while these opportunities are vast, they can only be valorized if Africa commits to investing its own resources in its own development by mobilizing and managing assets efficiently. Africa can break free from external dependence and harness its enormous capital in human, natural, fiscal, business capital, and also financial capital for transformative growth on the continent. Now is the time for Africa to change its paradigm with regard to growth and development financing. Africa's strategic allocation of its own resources will help attract and leverage global capital to accelerate investments in productive sectors across the continent. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, these country-focused reports serve as a vital tool bringing the macroeconomic insights of the African Economic Outlook reports down to the country levels where the rubber hits the road. The 2025 CFRs confirms that African countries are endowed with vast natural resources that are yet to be fully harnessed and possesses wide headrooms in fiscal resources and opportunities to maximize human capital, business capital, fiscal capital, and all forms of capital in order to grow fast in several African countries. Thus, the 2025 CFRs provide tailored recommendations that are practical, scalable, and implementable to support individual countries within their own political and economic realities to accelerate development in their development journey. More specifically, these CFRs provides for the bank's 54 regional member countries concrete policy recommendations aimed at boosting effective domestic capital mobilization and efficient utilization, and also harnessing other forms of capital for development through strengthening institutions, governance, rule of law, but also curbing illicit financial flows and other forms of leakages of capital from the continent. There will be no alternative to sound macroeconomic policy management across countries. For this capital to be leveraged better for Africa's development, countries must make that decision to focus squarely on improving the macroeconomic policy environment to create stability and attract foreign and domestic resources for development in Africa. Before I end, I would like to thank my dear brother, Desiree Venkatachadon, Senior Director of the Country Economics Department of the African Development Bank Group, and our able managers of the bank's Country Economics Department for coordinating the development of these CFR reports under my guidance, working closely with our talented team of country economists and lead economists across African countries. Thank you all very much. This work also involved valuable collaboration and inputs from several colleagues across the African Development Bank Group's Economic Governance and Knowledge Management Vice Presidency, which I lead, as well as other various complexes in the African Development Bank Groups. Dear colleagues, your dedication and collaboration throughout the process of developing these reports have been instrumental to bringing these reports to fruition. Thank you very much. I also thank Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank Group, and the bank's board of directors for their continued guidance and support during the process of developing the 2025 CFRs. Without them, we would not have been able to do this. Thank you all very much. I thank you also for attending today's launch of the CFRs for the respective countries across Africa. Your presence reflects your interests in the economic analysis work that are being carried out by the African Development Bank Group, your bank, to support the development of the bank's regional member countries. I am confident that you will find these insights from the country focus reports both relevant and impactful to unlock countries' true potentials across the different forms of capital. Above all, I call on all of us to stand together, to reason together, and work together in order to make Africa's capital work for Africa's development. Country by country, region by region, and at the continental level, and also more importantly, with greater collaboration and partnerships with our long-standing development partners across the world. Because together, we can make Africa's capital work for Africa's development. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.